woman don't suffer, lower everybody. Suffer, suffer for woman, enjoy forever. Money no like woman, woman no like woman. She no be like water. If woman ever marry you,
Good afternoon, everybody. Give me, I've eaten lunch energy now. Do you want me to tell them to play music so you can dance? Hey, oh yeah now. DJ, please give us our music. Oh, people want to dance. Oh yeah, oh, increase the volume. Oh yeah, oh. As you are dancing, come forward, please, so we can leave back seat for backbenchers. Oh yeah, dance. Hey, money no like woman. Hey, woman no like woman. What's going on, man? Men, yeah, men are like. That's why you came now. Let's go. Hey, let's go. Hey, she not got to give up a song. Hey, and eventually, oh, then go suffer, suffer, woman. Hey, I never thought you finish. Hey, I never thought you finish. Hey, I never thought. Hey, I'll see some dancers, oh. I never thought you finish. Hey, I never thought you finish. I never thought. Nobody be like woman. Hey, so I said come forward now. As you're dancing, come forward and leave the back for latecomers. Come forward, fill the seat in front of you. Thank you so much, DJ. I really appreciate it. So nobody's going to sleep, Abby? Are you sure? You are gingered. You are fired up. I love it. Welcome, 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 everybody. Really, really exciting to dive into this panel. It's a very important one, if I do say so myself. But look, all of you came. So I'm sure it's an important conversation. So as we know, today we're going to be talking about beyond the seat. Building systems that support women in cabinets, boardrooms, and workplaces, which is really a summary for building systems that support women who lead. And I'm just moderating this panel. But I have 4 amazing speakers that are going to be giving you some real nuggets. So I hope you're ready. Please join me as I just welcome each one of them up the stage. Please make sure that you're clapping. And just from a safety perspective, please, when you're coming up the stage, please be careful. But first, please join me in welcoming Amina Oyabola, who is the founder and chairperson of Women in Successful Careers, WISCA. Keep it going, keep it going. The next person I would like to bring up is Omomi Akingbongbe. She's the executive director for Women in Business and Public Service, WIMBs. Come on, come on, come on, come on. All right, and of course, I would like to invite the only man in our midst, a true ally, Jonathan Egege, his associate partner for DGA and Albright Stonebridge Group. Welcome, Jonathan. And of course, finally, we have Rachel Pinder, who's representing Hawa Haliru, who's the Director, Gender Affairs, Nigeria Governors Forum Secretariat. Please clap for them now. Awesome. So I want to set some context before we dive into this conversation. McKinsey recently released a Women in the Workplace report. And there were a few really interesting stats that came out of that. The first one is that 1 in 3 people who go into any career in this country are women, right? So, a lot of women start the journey. But guess what? When you get to the C-suite, we only have 28% of those women who started their journey at that top position, right? So it tells you there's a problem. Similarly, 3 in 10 women are promoted to senior level roles, but guess what? They leave in 1 year. Please, can we shut the door or maybe keep the noise quiet at the back? Is that shocking to anybody? It is shocking. So even when they get promoted, right, they actually leave within a year. And that's why we want to go beyond the seats, right? Because there's a reason why they're leaving. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And finally, it says that 77% of CEOs claim gender diversity is important, right? But only 33% of those companies track hiring and promotion data by gender. What that means is we talk a really good talk. The question is, do we walk the walk? So that's the conversation that we want to have today. And I'm going to invite my panelists. So, Mrs. O, I want to start with you. Through Whisker, you've built a pipeline of women leaders. And I think the question I'm wondering is, how can structured mentorship and leadership development close the gap between entry-level hires and executive leadership roles for women? And as I think through that, I'm wondering, is there a skill that we should be teaching women, right, to go from this entry level to the C-suite in a way where they don't leave within a year?
Thank you so much, Abosade, and good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for choosing to be here with us this afternoon. I'm really delighted to be here. Shout out to GIS and the PIC and NESG for giving us this platform, and a shout out to my collaborators on the platform as well. The women are coming together.
Yes.
And that's a very, very important thing and a big movement. So thanks also ASG for all the facilitation. Yeah, mentorship, why mentorship is important. At the plenary today, they talked about education and the importance of education. So we all go to primary school, we go to secondary school, we go to university, and we come out and we enter the workforce, right? And you get into the workforce. When you get into the workforce, especially since we're now in the digital age, and change is very, very rapid, right? You have to keep sharpening your skill. You have to keep building your knowledge, developing yourself. And a lot of us women get into the workforce, and that's where we get lost. We don't know how to navigate. And we're also grappling 2-3 years in with marriage, children, and the whole child care issues and work-life balance issues now kick in as well to compound the challenge of work. So without structured mentorship, which is really around capacity building, guidance, counseling, helping somebody there, showing you how to focus on your goals, and also how to provide the right sort of support systems that you need to be able to rise up to the top. Even when you are promoted, if you are grappling with all these challenges on your own without a structured framework around you, the tendency is for you at a certain point to say, you know what, I'm going to step out and I'm going to leave, which is why the statistics that Abosade shared is so important. So we've been able to prove, Whisker has been in existence for 17 years now, been able to prove the power of structured mentorship. All forms of mentorship are important, but structured mentorship is extremely transformational, extremely developmental. It helps to build your capacity. It helps to show you the way. You see a role model who has trodden the path that you want to tread, and they can guide you. But beyond that is the fact that through mentorship, the kind of opportunities that you will come across, you can't find without it. So it is your mentor through experiential learning, because I went before you, I've been through this experience. They call it experiential learning. In the workplace, the most powerful form of learning, beyond the formal structured learning in a classroom or online, is on the job through experience. You can't buy experience. So if you have the benefit of a mentor who has had some experience before you, and that person you're sharing your goal, you're sharing your aspiration, and that person is saying to you, oh, this direction you want to go through, if I were you, this is what I would do, because if you go this way, you will encounter so and so obstacle. It's very powerful. But finally, before I stop, is to say, beyond that guidance, if you develop the relationship is strong and you forge a strong relationship with your mentor, that mentor will become your sponsor and take you under their wing. And when you are not in the room and an opportunity is presented, that sponsor becomes your advocate and is speaking for you and opening doors that you would not have imagined possible.
Fantastic. Give her a round of applause. Don't miss it. Omomi, I want to come to you next. So Wimbase has long championed boardroom diversity, right? Why is it urgent, for Nigeria to move forward at least 35 women on boards? And before you speak, can I just maybe share a bit of information? So you would see the logo at the top there is Women in Leadership. I am very excited to let you know that for the first time, 4 organizations, including Willan, which I represent, Whisker, which Mrs. O represents, Wimbase, and the Nigeria Governors Forum have come together to form a coalition to push an agenda around women's leadership. And we're advocating for 35% women at the subnational executive level, but boards and private sector is really important. So I'm going to let Omomi talk a little bit about that, but I thought to share why what you're witnessing today is really, really powerful. And remember, we've heard a lot of talk about let's not work in silos. Let's come together and really push this agenda. So Omomi, why is it urgent that Nigeria moves forward with at least 35 women on boards and executive management, especially in listed companies?
Thank you very much, Abasidi, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll start with referring to the statistics you shared earlier, which is the fact that despite the influx of women into corporate organizations, very few of them are there at the top. And then I put this question out to every woman here. Do we have this gap because you have intellectual limitations? No, that's not why. And that's why I will first of all highlight the importance of listed organizations and the role they play in the economy and the country at large. Listed organizations are the most visible face to assess a country's economic status as well as their ESG status. And they also set the pace for SMEs and other sectors, the creative sectors, the influencers and all of that. Now, having identified the importance of these listed organizations and even looking at the statistics, the top 100 listed organizations in Nigeria, they have below 30% representation, like you mentioned, about 28. And the global standard says between 30 to 40 should be what we are looking at. So by default, first of all, assessing us, well, there's a lot of improvement, but we're still not there yet in terms of the global benchmark. And this is where investors, local and international, will view our status as a country. On the other leg, when it comes to having not just one gender predominantly dominant in the boardrooms and executive management level, because these are where decisions that affect you and I and the economy are being made. And we have 50% female representation. And we all agree that it's not about our intellectual capacity. So this is why it is urgent for us to drive that. At Wimbase, we're focused on inspiring and empowering women to to attain leadership positions, because we know the importance of filling this gap and how it affects things and trickle down. And there's been several research to buttress this. So it's not just about
women
for good, just it's not
women
about
for
charity.
women's sake.
Exactly.
Yes.
So organizations that have a diverse board get to take better decisions, because you avoid group thinking and even some blind spots. You get to take decisions because at the point we're wired differently, the things that you would see or view as a male or female would differ, and then when everything is combined, you get better decisions. Better decisions improves the bottom line of the organization, and apart from that, it also helps to retain talent.
Yeah.
You get to address soft issues that you think they're not important, but they're actually contributing to the employee morale to develop on their productivity. And I think the final bit that I would highlight is the fact that when we have that in place, investors are interested more, they have more confidence
Absolutely.
in investing in such organizations. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Omolmi. Now, Rachel, I want to come to you. And how many of us know about the reserved seats bill? I'm helping somebody do a survey. How many? No, I want to see your hands up. I mean it. So, Osasu, maybe 20%. So the work is a lot, right? And why is that important? It is important because gender quotas have been seen to work, right? And if you've ever read the national gender policy, it does make provision for a gender quota. It says 2006. But we are still not there yet. So Rachel, subnational governments are key to systemic reform. From the Governors Forum perspective, what commitments or reform can states champion to achieve at least 35% women in state cabinets?
Thank you very much. It is clear for NGF, if states truly want women in leadership, we must move beyond words and take the real step, which is the practical step, by ensuring that state is able to pass executive orders or legislative bills mandating minimum 35% representation of women across all cabinets and leadership positions across the state. So it has to be in line with the national gender policy as well. Because, for instance, Kaduna State has already have a proven law. They have passed the 35% law of women, 35% of senior civil service roles for women in Kaduna State. So it's a perfect example for Kaduna. A lot of states can actually leverage on that, what they've done, and then key into that. Secondly, states should set clear rules for gender balance in appointments for women and publicly share their targets. Let it be known out there, it should be there, so that people would be able to gain their trust, you know. So, and it will also help ministries to be on their toes, to be able to push and then try to see how they can key into the laws in the state. Recruitment of appointments of women in the state as well is very key, because women are already there, but they're not given the opportunity to be able to show their strength. So it is fair to ensure that qualified women are being able to be given the opportunity to, you know, offer their expertise in the state. Lastly, dashboard, the use of dashboard. The use of dashboard in each state is very, very important, especially in terms of gender equality. By working with civil society, like the Nigerian Governors Forums, we're able to, you know, ensure that states are we encourage states to be able to build healthy competitions, because if your state is not doing well,
Yes.
You're able to show it out there.
Yes.
The governors, the state should be able to say, okay, how do we come in? How do we ensure that we also shine, so that people can key in? State like Kaduna, Ekiti, Kwara State, Lagos are doing well in terms of women in leadership. So states can, other states can key in and learn from them.
That. Yeah, fantastic. Give her a round of applause. I think it was important for you to mention those states, because while it always feels like nothing is happening, and trust me, I know I do this work, but they're bright spots, and it is important to mention states like Kwara and Ekiti and Kaduna who are making good progress where there's political will. We've seen that it can make a difference. Jonathan, I want to bring you in now. I mean, the way I see it, you bring a global comparative perspective. And so if you can talk to us a little bit about how labor reforms strengthen Nigeria's competitiveness, and I think Omomi started to speak to some of that earlier, and improve women's retention in the workforce. And if you can sort of combine that with what lessons from other markets that Nigeria can adopt to build systems that enable women to thrive in leadership.
Yes, absolutely, Bosse. And thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I was telling someone earlier that I see all of you as my big sisters, and it's been a really great opportunity to sort of be a fly on the wall as this coalition has come together. And I'm really looking forward to sort of the impact you'll have together, and it's just been really great to see how you all play to your strengths and are coming together to advance this this agenda. So really important question around labor reforms, because I think that's a really important domino that needs to fall. And typically when we talk about women's leadership, there's a tendency to focus on women's political leadership because it's what's most visible, or women in the on board seats, as we've spoken about. But there's also a lot to be said about women in senior management and senior leadership who are forming policies, designing products, and sort of shaping what enterprises spend their time and, most importantly, their resources on. And so it's really critical for us to have women in sort of that cadre of leadership. In looking, and you mentioned sort of the global perspective. Let me see, who knows what the most globally equal country in the world is, or gender equal country in the world is? Yes? Close, but not quite. No, equal, not unequal. Close, but not quite. Fabia, you're not allowed to answer. No.
Some people have expo. Is it by row?
So it's actually Iceland, right? And actually the Nordic countries are quite progressive on gender equality and as an extension, women's leadership. And one of the things that's most interesting to me about Iceland is that some of what has driven this are labor reforms, as you mentioned, one of those being care policy, right? So in Iceland, 90.4% of all kids are in daycare, right? 90.4% of all kids. So think about what that does for women, how they can engage sort of career, and this is government mandated, right, and government invested. So of course in Nigeria what we've done is we sort of created that care economy, right? You get someone from the village or someone you can afford to take care of your kids, but in doing so also take away their ability to participate meaningfully in the economy, right? So there's a very direct correlation between women's labor participation and women's leadership, and I think that's one nut that we sort of need to crack. There are sort of smaller ways to do that. For example, moving from 12 weeks to 16 weeks of maternity leave, and I know that's one of the things you'll all be pushing for. But really systemically, it's creating sort of a care economy that's government mandated and that government invests in. And then, just speaking more broadly, and I know we'll come back to this, but comparatively in countries like Iceland, Rwanda, which is a leader in Africa, Namibia, which now has it's crazy to think, but as of this year, a female president, vice president, and speaker of the House, right? So the top three the top 3 sort of political leaders are women, and the first place that happened was in an African country, right? I think there's 3 big things that are true in all of those countries. Number 1 is the presence of legal frameworks and sort of commitments. And actually, Nigeria is actually a leader on this, right? So the 35%.
We are not lacking frameworks.
Right, so, if Nigeria if Nigeria sort of enacted all of its policies and laws, we would have at least 35 women in leadership, 35% women in leadership. We would have at least 35 women in all appointed positions, and there would be at least 1 woman on every board, right? Because that's actually a prescription in the national WE policy. But we're nowhere close to that, because unfortunately a lot of our policies end up on the shelf and don't go beyond that. But the other 2 things are political will, and it's not enough to just have political will without political institutions that enforce sort of that political will. So with political will, you get a Governor El Rufai, right? Or a Governor Abdul Razak, who have gender balanced cabinets, but there's no guarantee that when they leave, that will happen, right? But in some of these countries that we've spoken about, they're actually institutions whose job it is to sort of track, provide accountability on that piece. And then the third, and I think this is the most critical piece, is political movements that actually push for this. So I began with Iceland, and maybe I'll end there. In the 1970s, there was a day when actually all women in Iceland refused to go to work, refused to cook, and refused to take care of their kids, right? And it's known as sort of the red stocking sort of movement. It was a day. It's funny because the men in Iceland call it the longest Friday ever. Right? But after that really set in motion a lot of the switches and the policies that we've seen.
You're giving us ideas.
Right. So I didn't say anything, but I think women have, I would love to see sort of Nigerian women and their male allies leverage their political power a lot more. I think there's small pockets of that happening with you. I think a lot of the great work that's happening around the reserve seats bill, but we can do even more and are even more powerful than that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And I think because some people have started telling me time is almost up, I refuse to look that way. But I want us to, I never want to come to a place where we have these type of important conversations and we don't sort of, I call it burden transfer. Please join me. We don't transfer burdens to people who are sitting in this room to go and do something, to understand what can be done, so that when they find themselves, whether they're in a boardroom, sitting with somebody who's influential, their mommy, their daddy, their uncle, their auntie, they know, they can say, this is what you should be doing. So Mrs. O, I want to just invite you to say, beyond the seats, so the seats are great, and we're hoping we get that, right? Things like the reserve seats bill, the political will at the subnational level. What are the kind of systems that we need to build within institutions, whether it's private sector, whether it's public sector, that ensures that women don't just come inside? They rise, they thrive as they lead.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So, a lot has already been said, but, I'm going to start from, the private sector angle, which is around institutional reforms. So the first thing is really around CEOs, the leadership of those institutions. Not just talking the talk, as you said in the beginning, Abosade, but really walking the walk. And what does that mean? It means that we need to mainstream gender. It means that we need to integrate it into operations, the gender issues. So, and I'm going to speak about, so when you talk about policy reforms, I mean, all institutions have their policies, their processes, their procedures, their practices. So have those policies been reviewed, first of all, with a gender lens? Those institutions that say that they are gender friendly or are inclusive, have they set targets for themselves? Because all businesses in developing their business plans annually, they set business targets, which they review on a quarter by quarter basis. What is not measured never gets done. So are we tracking, even if you do set those targets, even if you do have D&I, diversity and inclusion policies, are you tracking them? Are you measuring? Are you building up from the ground floor? So I'm speaking again about mentorship frameworks, which I'm very passionate about. It really is about building from the ground up and ensuring that there's intentionality, there's deliberateness and focus around using mentorship as a development tool, a talent retention tool, a tool to ensure that you build women into leadership and that women through that process get developed. The capacity they need to build, they build it. The confidence that they need, is provided. And the support system in terms of the care economy and the kind of gender-friendly policies around hybrid work, remote work, etc., setting up creches or pause rooms, depending on your resources that you have available, are put in place. So what are those practices that we have? Those practices, if I was to go into any company, to any of the NGX, publicly listed companies, and we were to review them and to do an audit, what will we find? And are these things even on the audit checklist, for example? Are they things that they report into their board? Is it a strategic priority for those organizations? Because anything that is not a strategic priority will not be on the agenda of the CEO. If it's not on the agenda of the CEO, it's going to be nobody's business and nobody's going to pay attention to it. And what that means, of course, is also that it's not going to be budgeted. This morning also in the plenary, they talked about gender responsive budgeting. So what is not budgeted for is not going to get done with all the will in the world. So you need that sort of leadership commitment from the top in private sector. You also need that kind of leadership commitment because the president is the CEO of the country, So you need, and when we talk about political will, that essentially is what we're talking about. I mean, I think the current administration, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has, is talking the talk, which is great. But when we look at the data, I always say, data doesn't lie. I always say that data doesn't lie. And I always say, look, in God I trust, but show me the data. Yeah. Show me the data. What does the data show? National Assembly, what's our percentage in Nigeria? 4%. At the executive level, what's the percentage? I think it's 19, about 17 or between 17 and 19%. In the judiciary, what are the statistics and so on. We've just deployed a women in law mentoring program, and if you look at the data, I can share the data. We have a report which was based on data. We're very far. There are only 4% women in the Supreme Court. Only 5% are SANs, etc., and it goes on and on. So we must, in the public sector, all the policies are there. Bosode spoke to it. We have all the policies, we have all the strategy documents, we have all the blueprints, the we policy, the gender policy, just name it, we have it. Yeah. But what is the level of implementation? And that speaks to the absence of political will to get it done, because these are simple things to do. And Jonathan gave us, all the data around what's happening in Iceland, what's happening even in Africa, on the African continent itself, which is something that I think should be something we should all want to emulate.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrs. O. Omomi, what would you layer on that? Like, we're building practical things that we can do, that we want to see, that would let us know that systems are being designed for women to lead and thrive.
Permit me to just share a short story. So at Waybase, we have a pool of board-ready women that we train through our WIMBOD program. So we have organizations reaching out to us from time to time. We're looking for someone in this area and all that. But I put it on myself to ask them, why? Why do you want a woman? Only 2 out of 5 is able to articulate why. So I've even had one HR person say, they say, may we put women there, give me. Let's just move on from this. So I think the first thing is that sensitization, educating not just even the CEO, the entire system on the business case of having a diverse board, diverse executive management team, so that there is buy-in even beyond the policies that is in place. So when there is buy-in, and talking about what you said about transfer of burden, it's not just about those people here. All of us here in this room should be able to articulate why. Why should we have that kind of diversity? And if you don't, I'd say please get to our stand. Let's have your data. The Women in Leadership Coalition will furnish you with information that can harm you when you are able to face some certain conversations in that regard. So after sensitization, policies being in place become easier, the implementation becomes easier, and even trickling down recruitment process and all of that. But another thing I want to highlight, and sometimes we overlook this, the importance of showcasing role models that are already in and doing great in this area. So being able to showcase, and even you here in the room, if you're doing something amazing out there, don't be conservative about it, because that's what we're about sometimes when it comes to women. So you need to be able to project yourself and say, hey, I did this, and own it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Omomi. Rachel, what would you add to everything that has been shared so far? I mean, thinking about it from the public sector perspective.
Yeah, I think states need to be intentional, because if they're not intentional, I don't think all those, talking about 35% of women, would work. We need to be more intentional, and then ensure that, we appoint women, ensure that we have this 35% of new appointments goes to women across all the states. And then secondly, committees and boards should include both men and women. It should be fair representation. Because if we're not giving women opportunity, I don't think even the economy would grow. So we need to encourage fair representation in the state. Lastly, I would say that data is very important, because states needs to be accountable. Collecting data, having a dashboard for all the states, so that we would be able to monitor progress across the states. And then that would also build trust, because when states are able to see what they are doing, it will encourage them, and then they can learn from other states that are doing well, far better than them. So it's very important. I would also say that there are 4 states that are really doing well, which is Kwara, Ekiti, Lagos, and Kaduna. It's very important that other states can key into what they've done and then see how they can learn, because of course there are lots of mistakes they've done. They have a lot of lessons to learn from them, so that they can also, they don't have to reinvent the wheel, just but replicate. They can just replicate and ensure that they learn from their mistakes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Jonathan, what are you going to add to that?
At this point, anything I add would be repetitive, to be honest. But maybe one thing I will say is just like the power of exemplars is really, really, really important. So one thing that Nigerians are really good at is emulation, right? And if there's someone who has like a proven model of something, and especially if they're successful, we want to do that as well. And so I would say sometimes I think for those of us who do work or are in this gender ecosystem, a lot of times we sort of we want to appeal to the good nature of people, but a lot of times that's not enough, and you need to sort of make the economic case, but also find those exemplars, whether those are individuals or companies, who are sort of leading different sectors and shaping those sectors, and working with them to set new standards, right, about what is expected. So without leaking too much of the coalition strategy, I think just thinking about who the sector shapers are, I think this is why it's brilliant that, a lot of your focus will be on the listed companies, because, just the top 30 listed companies on the NGX are, I think, like 85% of the Nigerian economy, right? So if we can figure that out, that's a very big domino that will fall.
Fantastic. So they've already told us that the time will be up soon. But I want to respect the audience. So you walked into this room and you've heard a lot. The panelists, I think, have done an amazing job. but there's one burning question that you have. One. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is this. It's going to be quite kind of emotional because I've had the experience. What can we do for women that are in the private firm? I mean private firm like medium private firm that don't give opportunity for women with children to work. Like in my firm where I left, as soon as I got married, my boss started looking for another person to replace me because he's expecting that once you have a baby now, you won't be effective again, you understand? So what can we do? Because I have a lot of them in my environment. As soon as they have no more work, except you have the opportunity to get into the public service. So please, what can we do to bridge this gap? Because these are the people that make the most percentage of people that are even unemployed.
I'll invite Mrs. O to take that.
Okay, it's a difficult challenge. I'm not going to, paper my response. It's a very difficult challenge for SMEs because they have very limited resources. There's scarcity. They're on a tight shoestring. But I think it's also partly lack of awareness and understanding. Because, the fact that you're going to get married, the fact that you're going to have a baby, it's not a disease. Pregnancy is not a disease. There's a 9-month gestation period. And even the most healthy individual can fall ill, male or female, right? So there's that as well. I know that some women have very difficult challenges, right, when they conceive. I was blessed, I didn't have any problem when I got pregnant. I was working in a bank, all right, and it was a new generation bank, so it was quite small. It was a startup, so we were also quite thin on the ground. So everybody counted. I was never ill throughout the 9 months, and I worked right up until the end, and I was able to also forward plan and ensure that all my deliverables, I could still deliver on them during my maternity leave. So it was not too disruptive, but there was some disruption, and they were not able to fill the gap when I was away. But I think even for SMEs, for those that really have a bold vision and want to grow, they have to begin to think differently. We're talking, this conference is about new voices, new approaches. If you really want to grow, you can't begin to be so myopic and to say to yourself that, if she gets pregnant or she gets married, she has to leave. I've also experienced that kind of discrimination. Somebody refused to hire me just because I told them in the interview that I was pregnant. And pregnancy is not a disease. A pregnant woman who is healthy can give you more value than an able-bodied man who is not ill and who doesn't have the same level of commitment. So I think it's about the messaging.
Yes.
It's about educating people.
And that awareness creation.
And that awareness creation that Omomi mentioned.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mrs. O. We have come to the end of this panel, so join me in celebrating my panelists who brought this conversation to life. But we want to hear from you. Omomi wants to add one more thing, but they'll soon come and kick us out.
I'm sorry.
Please scan the QR code for feedback.
I just wanted to add to what Mrs. O said. I think as women, we should learn not to change ourselves. If you're taking a job, ask questions that matter to you. If I'm pregnant, what will happen? Do you have maternity leave? Am I entitled to my leave? Ask. Because at that point, you have a choice. And sometimes for SMEs, they might not even have thought it through. But if you have that conversation, let it be captured in your contract. Fantastic. And you're covered.
That's awareness as well. Thank you very much. Clap like you learned something today. Please, let's stand and take a picture. Thank you all so much for coming.